In the history of the Second World War, few weapons have earned the right to be called revolutionary. Fewer still were so effective that they terrified the enemy not with sound, but with silence. This is the story of a carbine that seemed impossible, a weapon so quiet that witnesses refused to believe it could exist. A firearm built for shadows and secrecy, designed to kill without announcement, engineered to operate where conventional weapons would betray their user with a single shot. This is the story of the Lisle Carbine, the weapon that made no sound yet spoke volumes about the future of covert warfare. The year is 1940. The British Empire faces its darkest hour. Nazi Germany controls most of Western Europe. Britain stands alone, its conventional military forces unable to strike directly at occupied territories. The War Office recognizes that defeating Germany will require more than traditional combat. Behind enemy lines, a different kind of warfare must be waged. Sabotage, assassination, intelligence gathering, and raids conducted by small teams operating in absolute secrecy. But conventional weapons betray their users. The crack of a rifle shot carries for miles. A single gunshot alerts entire garrisons, brings down patrols, collapses carefully planned operations in seconds. The newly formed Special Operations Executive, tasked with setting Europe ablaze through subversion and sabotage, faces a critical problem. Their operatives need a weapon that can eliminate sentries, guards, and targets without announcing its presence. Existing firearms, even with rudimentary suppressors, remain far too loud. The suppressors then available reduce noise, but cannot eliminate it. A suppressed Sten gun still produces enough sound to alert nearby soldiers. Silenced pistols like the Welrod require point-blank range and sacrifice accuracy. What the SOE needs does not yet exist. A rifle-caliber weapon with the accuracy to engage targets at practical distances, the reliability to function in hostile environments, and above all, the silence to fire without detection. The British military establishment considers such a weapon impossible. Senior officers dismiss the concept as fantasy. A truly silent firearm, they argue, contradicts basic physics. Every shot produces expanding gases, mechanical action, supersonic projectile flight. These factors ensure noise. But one man believes differently. William Godfrey de Lisle, an engineer working at the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield, understands that silence is not impossible. It requires rethinking fundamental assumptions about firearms design. Rather than attempting to suppress an existing rifle, de Lisle envisions building an entirely new weapon around the principle of silence. His solution combines existing components in a revolutionary configuration. He begins with the proven Lee-Enfield action, the bolt system British soldiers have trusted for decades. But instead of chambering the standard .303 British cartridge, he modifies the rifle to accept 45 ACP, a subsonic pistol round. This single decision changes everything. Subsonic ammunition eliminates the supersonic crack that betrays conventional rifles. The bullet travels below the speed of sound, removing one major source of noise. The weaker pistol cartridge produces less gas pressure, making suppression far more effective. De Lisle then designs the suppressor not as an attachment, but as an integral component. The massive suppressor extends over and beyond the barrel, forming the weapon's most distinctive feature. Inside this cylinder, expansion chambers allow propellant gases to expand and cool gradually, rather than erupting from the muzzle in a single explosive burst. Baffles redirect and slow the gas flow further. The suppressor is not screwed onto the barrel as an afterthought. It is built as part of the weapon itself, permanently attached, optimized for maximum sound reduction. The entire design philosophy centers on eliminating noise at every possible source. De Lisle removes the muzzle blast, suppresses the mechanical action, uses subsonic ammunition, and creates a weapon where even the bolt cycling produces minimal sound. When de Lisle completes his first prototype in 1942, he faces immediate skepticism. Military officials accustomed to the thunderous report of standard rifles cannot believe his claims. He arranges demonstrations at the Small Arms School in Hythe. Officers and instructors gather to observe this unusual carbine with its bulbous suppressor and shortened stock. De Lisle loads the weapon and fires. The reaction is universal disbelief. Witnesses hear only a faint mechanical click, the sound of the bolt cycling and the firing pin striking the primer. The actual gunshot is quieter than the mechanical noise of the action itself. At 30 meters, the sound is barely audible. At 50 meters, it disappears entirely into ambient noise. Some observers suspect trickery. They inspect the target, examining the bullet holes, confirming that live ammunition was indeed fired. The demonstration shatters assumptions about what firearms can achieve. Despite this success, the War Office remains reluctant. Military doctrine has no framework for evaluating such a weapon. It fires pistol ammunition, limiting its effective range compared to rifle cartridges. It holds only 8 rounds in its modified Lee Enfield magazine. It cannot be produced quickly or in large numbers. The suppressor requires precise machining and hand-fitting. Each carbine takes significantly longer to manufacture than a standard rifle. For a military establishment focused on mass production and standardized equipment, the Lisle represents an expensive anomaly. Why invest resources in a specialized weapon with limited range when those same resources could produce dozens of standard rifles or Sten guns? The Special Operations Executive answers that question. Their operatives work behind enemy lines where a single sound can mean death. For SOE agents dropped into occupied France, Norway, Belgium, and the Netherlands, the ability to eliminate a sentry silently means the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. A raid on a German fuel depot requires removing guards without alerting the garrison. An assassination of a collaborator must be executed without bringing down enemy patrols. Intelligence-gathering operations depend on remaining undetected. For these missions, the Lisle is not merely useful. It is essential. The SOE bypasses traditional procurement channels and secures approval for limited production. The carbine will never see mass deployment, but for those few who need it most, it will be manufactured. Production begins at the Ford Dagenham plant, better known for manufacturing vehicles than weapons. Lisle requires specialized manufacturing capabilities. The suppressor construction involves multiple precision-machined components assembled with exacting tolerances. The expansion chambers must be perfectly aligned. The baffles must be positioned precisely to maximize gas dispersion. The barrel threading must be flawless to ensure a permanent, gas-tight seal with the suppressor body. Any imperfection compromises sound reduction. Each carbine is essentially hand-built, with skilled machinists fitting individual components rather than assembling standardized parts from an assembly line. The resulting weapon measures approximately 35 inches in overall length, with a barrel of roughly 7.5 inches surrounded by a suppressor that extends to just over 12 inches total. It weighs approximately 9 pounds, heavy for a carbine, but manageable for special operations use. The stock, derived from the Thompson submachine gun, provides a familiar grip for Commonwealth soldiers. The sights are simple and practical, recognizing that the carbine is designed for engagement distances under 100 yards rather than long-range precision fire. The trigger pull is smooth and predictable, inherited from the Lee Enfield action's proven mechanics. Total production remains extremely limited. Estimates suggest fewer than 200 Lisle carbines were manufactured during the war years, though exact figures remain uncertain due to wartime secrecy. Most sources indicate approximately 130 units across different marks. The Mark I variant, produced first, features the original prototype specifications. The Mark II incorporates minor improvements in manufacturing and ergonomics, but retains the core design unchanged. Both versions deliver the same extraordinary performance. In an era where millions of rifles roll off production lines, the Lisle remains a rare weapon, issued only to those with the greatest need for its unique capabilities. Those who receive the carbine quickly learn its strengths and limitations. The effective range extends to approximately 100 yards, though accurate shooting remains possible beyond that distance. The 4.5 ACP round lacks the power and trajectory of rifle cartridges, but proves entirely adequate for its intended purpose. Sentries do not require elimination from 500 yards. Close-quarters combat in occupied villages, nighttime raids on airfields, and sabotage operations on rail lines occur at distances where the Lisle excels. The carbine's accuracy surprises many users. The heavy barrel and substantial suppressor weight reduce recoil to almost nothing. Follow-up shots can be placed with remarkable precision. The bolt action, though slower than semi-automatic alternatives, operates smoothly and reliably. The silence remains the weapon's defining characteristic. Field reports from commando units describe engagements where targets fall without nearby enemies reacting. In one documented incident, an SOE team in occupied France eliminated 3 German sentries in succession, each guard dropping silently while his companions remained unaware only meters away. The psychological impact on surviving enemies who discover their comrades dead without having heard a shot proves substantial. German and Japanese forces begin reporting ghost attacks, claiming Allied commandos possess supernatural abilities to kill without sound. These reports, dismissed as superstition by enemy intelligence officers, reflect genuine confusion about how such attacks could occur. In Burma and the Pacific Theater, the Lisle proves particularly valuable. Jungle warfare occurs at close range, where conventional rifles offer no advantage. The dense vegetation that muffles all sound makes the carbine's silence even more effective. British and Commonwealth commando units conducting raids behind Japanese lines use the Lisle to eliminate sentries guarding supply dumps, airfields, and headquarters compounds. The weapon's reliability in humid tropical conditions, inherited from its Lee Enfield action heritage, ensures it functions when needed. Unlike more complex suppressed weapons, the Lisle operates in mud, rain, and extreme heat without malfunction. European operations similarly benefit from the carbine's capabilities. Resistance fighters supplied by SOE use the weapon for targeted assassinations of collaborators and German occupation officials. The silence allows operations in populated areas where conventional weapons would alert entire neighborhoods. A single shot from a Lisle in an occupied city produces less noise than a car backfiring. Operatives can eliminate targets and disappear into crowded streets before anyone realizes a killing has occurred. This capability fundamentally changes the calculus of resistance operations, making targeted attacks feasible in circumstances where they would otherwise be impossible. The carbine also serves in more conventional commando operations. During coastal raids on occupied Europe, assault teams use the Lisle to neutralize perimeter guards before the main force attacks. The elimination of sentries without gunfire allows raiders to penetrate deeper into enemy positions before detection. In several documented raids, German defenders remained unaware of British presence until explosive charges detonated, having never heard the shots that killed their guards. This tactical advantage, though difficult to quantify, saves lives and increases mission success rates. Not everyone embraces the weapon immediately. Some soldiers, conditioned by years of using conventional rifles, struggle to trust a firearm that makes no sound. The psychological adjustment proves difficult. A weapon that fires without noise feels wrong, almost dangerous, as if it might not be functioning properly. Experienced users learn to overcome this instinct. They come to appreciate that silence is not weakness, but rather the carbine's greatest strength. Veterans of multiple operations develop faith in the Lisle that borders on reverence. For those who operated behind enemy lines, the carbine represents survival itself. Production challenges prevent the Lisle from ever becoming widely distributed. The specialized manufacturing requirements mean that even as the war continues, output remains minimal. Requests from field units exceed supply. SOE controllers must prioritize allocations, determining which operations most urgently require the weapon's capabilities. This scarcity adds to the carbine's mystique. Among special operations forces, the Lisle becomes legendary, a weapon most soldiers hear about but few ever see, let alone fire. As the war progresses toward Allied victory, the Lisle's role evolves. Planning begins for operations in occupied Germany itself. The carbine would have proven invaluable for missions deep inside the collapsing Reich. However, Germany's surrender in May 1945 comes before these operations fully materialize. The Lisle's combat service in Europe ends with the war itself, but its operational life continues far beyond 1945. In the post-war years, Britain faces new conflicts requiring the same skills the SOE developed during the war. The Malayan emergency, beginning in 1948, sees communist insurgents waging guerrilla war in dense jungle. British forces responding to this threat include special operations units trained in the clandestine warfare techniques perfected during the Second World War. The Lisle Carbine, though no longer in production, remains in service with these units. Its silence proves as valuable against jungle insurgents as it was against Japanese forces. Reports from Malaya indicate the weapon continued performing effectively well into the 1950s, demonstrating the robust reliability of its design. Other conflicts see unofficial use of remaining Lisle carbines. Exact details remain classified, but evidence suggests British Special Forces retained small numbers of the weapons for decades after the war. The unique capabilities the carbine provides ensure that despite its age and the development of newer suppressed weapons, some units prefer keeping Lisle carbines available for operations where absolute silence remains paramount. The carbine becomes a relic that refuses to retire, too valuable to discard even as newer technology emerges. The Lisle's influence extends far beyond its limited production numbers. It establishes principles that shape all subsequent suppressed weapons development. The concept of integral suppression, where the suppressor is built as part of the weapon rather than attached as an accessory, becomes standard for serious suppressed firearms. The use of subsonic ammunition to eliminate sonic crack becomes recognized as essential for true silence. Modern suppressed weapons, from specialized sniper rifles to submachine guns designed for special operations, incorporate lessons learned from the Lisle's design. Engineers developing suppressed weapons in the decades following the war study it as the benchmark against which all other designs are measured. In recent years, the Lisle has experienced a renaissance of interest. Collectors prize original wartime examples, though their rarity makes them extremely difficult to acquire. Several gunsmiths and small manufacturers have produced modern reproductions. Building new carbines to original specifications or creating updated versions incorporating modern materials while retaining the core design philosophy. These reproductions allow modern shooters to experience what made the original so remarkable. Firing a Lisle remains a surreal experience. The weapon functions like any bolt-action carbine until the trigger breaks. Then, instead of the expected rifle report, there is only silence, a faint mechanical sound, and the target downrange showing a new hole. For those accustomed to conventional firearms, the experience is genuinely shocking, even when expected. Acoustic testing of preserved original Lisle carbines using modern sound measurement equipment confirms wartime claims about the weapon's silence. At the shooter's position, the sound measures approximately 85 decibels, comparable to a door closing or moderate conversation. This is quieter than most suppressed firearms using modern technology. At 30 meters from the muzzle, the sound becomes almost inaudible, lost in background environmental noise. No other military firearm of the Second World War achieved comparable sound reduction. The Lisle remains, by measurable acoustic standards, the quietest operational firearm deployed during that conflict. What made the Lisle truly extraordinary was not that it was the most powerful weapon of its era. It fired pistol ammunition with limited range compared to rifles. Nor was it the most versatile. It served a narrow tactical niche unsuited to conventional combat. What made it revolutionary was its perfect execution of a single purpose. When silence mattered more than any other factor, when detection meant death and covert action required absolute stealth, the Lisle delivered capabilities no other weapon could match. It proved that with thoughtful engineering and willingness to challenge conventional assumptions, firearms could be transformed in ways military establishments considered impossible. The Lisle overcame institutional skepticism through demonstrated performance. It survived limited production and wartime scarcity to influence generations of weapons development. It proved that specialized weapons designed for specific tactical requirements can have strategic impact far exceeding their numbers. In the history of military firearms, few weapons have done so much while remaining so little known. The Lisle carbine stands as testament to innovation born from necessity, engineering that prioritized effectiveness over convention, and the principle that sometimes the deadliest weapon is the one nobody hears. If you enjoyed this look into military history, make sure to subscribe for more stories about legendary and forgotten weapons. Tell us in the comments what firearm you would like to see next. Your suggestion might inspire our next episode.